Turning Philip K. Dick stories into really good screen adaptations is not the easiest job, but television gives this material a few different options. You can build a whole world across several seasons, or adapt one short story at a time in an anthology format. And over the years, it has tried both, with very mixed results. So today, let's look at this side of Philip K. Dick adaptations: the good, the bad, and the ones that are basically lost. Let's start with Total Recall 2070. With a title like that, you might expect the show to be closely tied to the short story We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, or at least to Paul Verhoeven's 1990 film version. But the actual show only has a few nods that place it in the same universe. Instead, it takes much more from Blade Runner, which was based on Dick's Do Android's dream of Electric Sheep. Most of the show works like a police procedural. The characters deal with a new case in each episode, while a larger story slowly reveals the motives and ethics of the world's powerful megacorporations. It is a little dated, but still a decent watch. The stories are engaging, the characters are interesting, and the world is dark and grungy enough for this kind of material. Unfortunately, the show only lasted one season with 22 episodes, so several major plot points were left unresolved. As far as I can tell, Total Recall 2070 is not easy to stream, though you can still find copies on YouTube. But if you're not going to watch or rewatch the whole series, I'd really recommend the two-part pilot, which was released separately as Total Recall 2070: Machine Dreams. Steven Spielberg's Minority Report may have disappointed some fans of the original short story with its very different ending, but the spirit of the original idea was still there. The 2002 film adapted the story into a big near-future sci-fi movie set in a world where police are warned about serious crimes before they happen by a group of psychics known as precogs. More than a decade later, Amblin, Paramount, and 20th Century Fox developed a TV series with the same title. It was made as a direct sequel to Spielberg's film and first aired in September 2015. The series takes place after the collapse of the pre-crime division. It follows Dash, a former precog who still works with law enforcement to prevent crimes while trying to hide his abilities from people who might want to use them. That sounds promising, but the show has a weak plot and not much chemistry between the main cast, so it never really gets going. The viewing figures were poor, the reviews were not especially kind, and the original run was cut by 3 episodes. After that, Minority Report was not renewed for a second season, which was probably for the best. The other Philip K. Dick show from 2015 was much better. The Man in the High Castle is still the biggest television adaptation of Dick's work so far. It takes his 1962 novel, which won the Hugo Award, and brings its alternative history concept to life with modern effects. The series imagines what might have happened if Nazi Germany and the Empire of Japan had won World War II. In this version of history, the former United States has been divided into separate areas controlled by the two powers. A big part of the show is simply seeing how this world works. The Man in the High Castle has a familiar 1960s look, but mixed with fascist symbols and values from World War II. That contrast is one of the key elements that makes the setting both interesting and uncomfortable. Yes, over 4 seasons, the show had to go well beyond the boundaries of Dick's original novel, and to its credit, it mostly pulled that off. Electric Dreams may not be perfect, but it is still easy to recommend. It is a 1-season anthology series with 10 self-contained episodes, each based on a different story. Some episodes were received very well, including Kill All Others and Real Life, based on The Hanging Stranger and Exhibit Piece. Others are more average, and some are pretty forgettable. At times, Electric Dreams also suffers from predictability and familiarity. The father thing, for example, can feel a little like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But that is probably part of the problem with adapting stories that are now more than half a century old. Still, Electric Dreams gives you a solid collection of Philip K. Dick science fiction ideas with good production and good acting, and it is still worth checking out. Blade Runner Black Lotus is a slightly different case. I have not actually watched this one, but I think it still deserves a quick mention. It is an anime series, not directly based on one of his stories, but set inside the Blade Runner universe, so there is still some connection. It takes place in Los Angeles in 2032 and follows Elle, a female replicant who has lost her memories. She is trying to figure out who she is and why she was created, with only a locked memory device and a Black Lotus tattoo to go on. So if you really need more of the Blade Runner universe, this may still be worth watching. Now we get to the most interesting part: 2 television adaptations of Impostor, both of which are basically impossible to watch now. So for a few minutes, this video is going to turn into a podcast. The short story was first published in 1953. It is set in a future where humanity is fighting a war against the Outspacers. The humans are preparing to use a new weapon, but then Spence Olham, one of the scientists working on it, is suddenly accused of being an impostor, an android bomb sent by the enemy. He goes on the run and tries to prove his innocence. But the problem is exactly the kind of problem this story is built on. If he really is the impostor, he would probably be programmed not to know it. The first television version came in 1962 as an episode of the British science fiction anthology series Out of This World. This is especially notable because it was the first adaptation of Dick's work made for television or film, and it was produced while he was still alive. Unfortunately, the episode itself is lost. It was wiped after broadcast, which was normal practice at the time. All that survives is a soundtrack recording, with about 8 minutes missing. That audio is said to be included on DVD. One contemporary review said the episode had plenty of movement and enough scenes, but the limited sets made the budget painfully obvious. Still, for the first screen adaptation of Philip K. Dick, I would absolutely love to see it. Then, nearly 20 years later, Impostor was adapted for television again, this time as an episode of an Italian anthology series whose title translates into English as The Charm of the Unusual. This one is also hard to talk about properly now. I tried to find at least some clips from it, but as far as I could tell, it no longer seems to be available online. All I could really find were mentions of the episode in Spanish. Of course, we do have the 2001 movie adaptation, which is not bad at all. But it is still sad that these first 2 television versions are gone.